Investigations. Step 2. Writing a research question or problem. What do we need to do? What do we need to include in a research question or problem? Well, we should include the independent variable, the dependent variable, the range and units of the independent variable, and the units of the dependent variable. And how do we write it? Well, it should be written in the form of a question, and it should question what happens to the dependent variable when we change the independent variable. How does the independent variable affect the dependent variable? So, when heating up a frog, the independent variable would be water temperature. Dependent variable, frog heart rate. The IV, range and units, 30 to 70 degrees Celsius. I'm going to start saying IV instead of independent variable. And I'm going to start saying dV instead of dependent variable. And the dV unit would be beats per minute. So, we could write something like this. How will a frog's heart rate change when it is heated in water at different temperatures? You can see that I put the two variables in green. They're both there. What's missing though? You notice I hadn't put in the range. So there I have. I put it in brackets after the independent variable. But it was missing the units, and so they are there. Just put at the end of the range within the brackets. And there's still one thing missing. Can you guess what it is? That's right. I hadn't put in the units for the dependent variable, beats per minute. So there we have it. A research question or problem that has both variables and the units for both variables and the range for the independent variable. Splendid. Next. How will a frog's heart rate change when it is heated in different liquids? And again, we've got both variables there. However, we're missing, that's right, the iterations for the independent variable, or the range, if it were numbers. Water, salt, water, cola, milk, and of course, gravy. But we didn't have the units for the dependent variable, and so we'll put that in the bottom. And now we have a complete research question or problem. We've got both variables, and we've got the units for the dependent variable, and of course, in this instance, there are no units for the independent variable. What about catapulting a frog? What would be the IV? Mass of a frog, dV, distance travelled, IV range in units, 0.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius, and the dV units would be meters. So, how are we going to write this? Well, how does the mass of a frog affect the distance it will travel when fired from a catapult? Sounds pretty good, but we're missing a few things, aren't we? So let's put in the range for the independent variable. Let's not forget the units for the independent variable. And of course, we're going to have to put in the units for the dependent variable. And there we have a perfect research question at the bottom. Next, we've got both variables, and this time we're looking at speed. Here's the dependent variable. What have we forgotten? Yes, you've got it. We didn't have the range in for the independent variable. We've also forgotten the units, and finally we've got to put those units in for the dependent variable too. Great. What about the rocket frog investigation? Well, we need, let's look at the Mentos one rather than volume of of cola. So the independent variable, number of Mentos. The dV, height travelled. The range for the IV and its units, we've got 1 to 5, and the units would just be Mentos, or you could put like mints. And the dV units would be meters. So this is looking pretty good. How will the height travelled by a bottle rocket containing cola change as you add a different number of mentals. But obviously we're missing stuff, so let's put it in there. Let's put in the range for the independent variable. Let's put in the units for the independent variable, and then let's make sure we have the units for the dependent variable. Great. Once you have a good research problem and you put all the important bits in, you should probably tell the reader why you're doing the experiment. Give some context. And don't say that. Here's an example. For the heating up a frog to different temperatures, why would you do such a thing? Well, the context of the investigation could be that you are trying to discover if taking hot baths can put a strain on the heart. What about when we're using different liquids? Well, why would we do that? Well, this would explore whether the type of liquid used in a bath can cause adverse effects on the heart. Perhaps one type of liquid will warm you more than another because of its specific heat capacity, even at the same temperature. Research question. How does the mass of a frog affect the distance it will travel when fired from a catapult? Now, why would we do this? Well, perhaps in history you've just found out about how catapults were used in ancient battles, and you're wondering, would the mass of the projectiles have to be taken into account when you're trying to calculate how to hit the enemy on his or her head? What about this one? How will the height traveled by a bottle rocket containing cola change as you add a different number of mentals? Why on earth would you do this? Well, it's just a model, isn't it? And what are you modelling? This investigation is really exploring whether the height a rocket travels is affected by increasing the amount of chemicals used in the rocket fuel. Interesting. So, if you got to the end of this video, you can give yourself a pat on the back and you get the certificate for writing research questions. Splendid.